I never thought I'd step into a barn Monday morning and find a half-eaten rotisserie chicken, a birthday banner, a blonde wig, and what looked an awful lot like a used adult diaper shoved between my hay bales. But that's exactly what greeted me. At first, I figured maybe a possum with fancy taste had lost its mind. But when 2 days later I found a busted karaoke machine and a bag of limp helium balloons, yeah, that's when I knew this wasn't wildlife. This was a full-on declaration of war. And deep down, I already knew who was behind it. Karen, the self-declared queen of our fresh-out-the-box HOA. Before all this, my 5 acres were heaven, quiet pasture, old red barn, goats and chickens, and a porch made for sipping coffee with no one telling me my fence was an inch too high. Then came the HOA, and with it, rules. Stupid ones. No lawn gnomes over 10 inches. No wind chimes louder than 70 decibels. No animals within 30 feet of a property line, even if your neighbor lived a quarter-mile away. I showed up to the first HOA meeting hopeful, cleanest overalls on, trying to be neighborly. That was the last time I smiled in that room. Karen walked in like a game show host with a clipboard and a smirk that screamed, "This is my moment." She lived 4 houses down in a stucco disaster with fake columns, fake flowers, and enough gnomes to stage a coup. No job, just a full-time schedule bossing everyone. She fined one guy $200 for an inflatable turkey left out after Thanksgiving. That turkey, 1 foot tall and deflated, drying on his porch. He moved out 2 weeks later. At the meeting, I made the mistake of questioning the uniform mailbox policy. Karen's face tightened like I'd kicked her dog. "We simply want to maintain community standards," she said, in a voice that made you feel like your soul tracked in mud. I let it go. She didn't. First trash drop? I figured maybe the wind had rolled a bag in, or a raccoon was feeling theatrical. I cleaned it, muttering something about possums and glam. Didn't think twice. But when the next load came, a bin of old makeup, odd shoes, and a prom dress, I got suspicious. My barn stayed latched. Nothing else on the property was touched. This was no accident. This was placed. Tucked. Hidden. It was creepy. But the third time? That broke me. A black trash bag, tied with a pink ribbon, gently nestled in my feed trough like some twisted offering. Inside, empty wine bottles, moldy cucumbers, and a stack of HOA newsletters with Karen's signature in bold. That's when it hit me. This wasn't random. This was personal. And it reeked, literally and not. I tried to confront her the next morning. She was pruning her mailbox topiary like she was prepping it for prom. I walked up, hands raised like I was negotiating hostage terms. "Hey Karen, just wondering if you've seen anyone near my barn? Someone's been dumping trash." She didn't even blink. "Well," she said, snipping a leaf like it wronged her, "maybe if your property didn't look like a dump, folks wouldn't confuse it." That was it. I bit my tongue, nodded, and walked away. But inside, I was fuming. I'd done nothing to this woman but exist. Apparently that was enough to make me her new project. And if there's one thing I hate more than garbage in my feed bins, it's being treated like I'm stupid. I needed proof. Real proof. So I dug through my shed and pulled out my old trail cam from deer season. Mounted it above the barn door, angled just right to catch anything shady. First night, nothing. But 2 nights later, jackpot. I played the footage, jaw slack. There she was, Karen, creeping across my yard in fuzzy slippers, dragging a trash bag like a raccoon Santa. She slipped in a goat puddle, served her right, then dumped the bag inside like she was planting a flag. Walked off like she'd just saved the town. I laughed so hard I nearly dropped the camera. But the laughter faded. This woman was sneaking onto my land, endangering my animals, all because I wouldn't conform. I didn't know if she wanted to harass me into moving or stack fake evidence to find me. But one thing was certain, I wasn't going to sit back. But even then, I didn't expect what happened next. Because as I sat in that barn later that night, wondering what to do, I heard rustling behind the feed bins. I turned slow, expecting a raccoon or maybe a stray cat. But what? Out came a whole raccoon family, 3 of them, waddling out like they were the new landlords, sniffing around the pile of garbage Karen so generously dumped in my barn. They locked eyes with me. I locked eyes with them. And in that strange moment of interspecies eye contact, I had a flash of inspiration. A wild, ridiculous, possibly brilliant idea. Maybe I wouldn't have to deal with Karen's trash on my own. Maybe I had a few furry allies. And maybe, just maybe, It was time to let nature handle her mess. Next morning, I was at the kitchen table sipping coffee, grinning like a fool. My trail cam footage was crystal clear. There she was, Karen, Empress of the HOA, sneaking across my land like a bathrobe-wearing bandit, dragging a garbage bag like it was stolen treasure. She slipped on some mud mid-mission, flailed like a wacky waving arm guy, and flung trash all over my pasture before hobbling away wearing one sock. I watched it 3 times, laughing harder every time. Once the laughter faded, I had to figure out what to do with the proof. I wasn't about to let it slide. She was using my barn like a dump site, and I could get blamed by the very HOA she ran. If I didn't act, who knew what she'd bring next? Rotten lasagna? An old rowing machine? Her Uncle Ed? HOA meeting was Thursday. I showed up early, flash drive in my pocket, and trouble on my mind. The meeting was in the usual clubhouse, a model home turned beige prison of fake plants and cinnamon-scented shame. Karen was already barking orders about mulch color. I waited until neighborhood concerns, then stood up like I had something simple to say. Karen looked irritated that I dared exist. I strolled up, popped the flash drive into their clunky old laptop, and hit play. The room fell dead silent. On screen, Karen, dragging trash, slipping, tossing junk like a piñata explosion. Someone in the back snorted. Then came the laughter. Loud enough to echo off the sad beige walls. Folks were wiping their eyes. One guy dropped his glasses. Karen's face went pink, then red, then nearly purple. She stomped up, yanked the cord from the projector, spun to face the room like a villain in the final act. "That's fake," she screamed. "That's AI or photoshopped, or whatever. Russian bots." She jabbed her finger at me. "He's trying to frame me." Her voice cracked, and for a second, I almost felt sorry. Almost. But then she snarled, "This is harassment. I'm reporting you to the HOA Violations Committee." I just stared. "Aren't you the HOA Violations Committee?" The room exploded again. Even the soft-spoken treasurer nearly spit out his coffee. Karen, of course, went full meltdown. She ranted for 10 minutes about lies, digital manipulation, and society falling apart, while everyone else watched her unravel like a dollar store sweater. She convinced the board to table the matter for review, which, let's be real, meant burying it. The next week was chaos. Mailbox, trashed. Note on my windshield. "Enjoy your barn, garbage man." And worst of all, my chicken stopped acting right. I checked the barn. Plastic wrap, cupcake liners, bottle caps in the feed. Karen's trash wasn't just messy, it was dangerous. One hen got sick. That's when the laugh stopped. It hit me. Facts and logic wouldn't stop Karen. She owned the board, twisted every narrative, and punished anyone who dared defy her. She wanted war? Fine. But I'd keep it clean. No lies. No tricks. Just nature. That night, beer in hand, flashlight by my knee, I saw my old friends return. The raccoons waddled out, chittering like tiny burglars with a plan. One even came right to my boot, sniffed it, then scurried off with a yogurt lid like it was gold. That's when it clicked. They were halfway to being a cleanup crew already. So I made them an offer they couldn't refuse. Each night after, I started accidentally, leaving them little treats. Mini marshmallows, dog chow, cat kibble, peanut butter crackers. To the raccoons, it was like Thanksgiving rolled around every night. They started showing up like clockwork, sometimes even hanging out by the barn before sunset like they had dinner reservations. And the trash? They went through it with freakish precision, pulling out leftovers, gnawing on wrappers, even dragging junk into the yard, basically helping me clean up. It was bizarre, but oddly brilliant. I didn't need another face-off with Karen. All I had to do was keep my furry little cleanup crew fed. But I wasn't stopping there. Phase 2 was in motion. Karen wanted to dump trash on my land. Fine. I'd make sure it made its way right back to her. I gathered up her garbage, especially anything remotely edible, and doused it in sardine oil and peanut butter. Then I stuffed it into a loosely tied bag and set it on the edge of her yard just after dark. Then I waited. From my porch, I watched them march over like a misfit raccoon army. They tore the bag open like it owed them money and flung her junk everywhere. One hauled a moldy slipper to her doorstep. Another darted under her deck with what I swear was a half-eaten sandwich. It was beautiful chaos, justice, trash style. At exactly 6:12 a.m., I heard the scream. Not fear, pure frustration. I grabbed my binoculars just in time to see her, flailing in a pink robe, trying to scare off the raccoons with a leaf blower. They didn't budge. Her fake rose bushes were flattened. One raccoon was on her porch swing, chewing a granola bar like he owned the place. Later that day, an urgent HOA email hit inboxes warning of a local raccoon problem, serious health hazard, and property risk, they said. Karen blamed me, obviously, claimed I'd weaponized wildlife. But this time, the HOA board didn't rally behind her. A few of them had started asking about the trash, the video footage, and Karen's authority in general. Things were shifting, and I had a feeling the raccoons were just getting warmed up. By night 3, the raccoons weren't just a crew, they were a tactical unit. They arrived in formation, sniffed out the bait, and went to work. Sardine oil and peanut butter were their mission fuel. I watched from the shadows as one scaled her picket fence like a tiny raccoon ninja, while the others slipped through a hole under the gate I hadn't even seen. Seconds later, cupcake wrappers and sticky takeout boxes flew like confetti. One dragged a yogurt-covered shoe onto her welcome mat like a housewarming gift. It was performance art. Garbage ballet. The next morning topped it all. Mid-sip of coffee, I heard a scream so loud it rattled the wind chimes. Karen burst out of her house barefoot, waving a Swiffer like a sword and a citronella candle like a torch. The raccoons didn't care. One lounged in her bird bath with a pizza slice. Another was rummaging through glitter. My favorite was dragging a paper towel roll across her driveway like it was marking territory. Karen started throwing garden gnomes, missing every time. One raccoon watched her from the roof, judging her like a disappointed roommate. I almost spit out my coffee laughing. But then, something didn't sit right. There was more trash than any household could make. And mixed in with it, paperwork, folders, printed emails, receipts. So I went through the garbage she dumped on my property more carefully. And that's when I found it. A half-shredded envelope addressed to the HOA treasurer. It read, reimbursement request. Inside were receipts for landscaping work that never happened and a memo with Karen's signature approving a $1,200 payment for neighborhood beautification. But my yard didn't have new benches. No extra flowers. Nothing had been beautified, unless she meant her own yard. That's when it clicked. She wasn't just dumping garbage. She was hiding things. HOA documents, receipts, complaint forms marked anonymous. Even a problem properties list with addresses, including mine, circled in red. Karen wasn't just being petty. She was covering tracks, running her own HOA empire behind everyone's back. My barn wasn't just a dump site. It was her personal shredder. And now I had all the pieces. If I wanted to take her down for good, I'd need to do it with flair. Karen had dodged blame before, claiming deepfakes and editing tricks. But not this time. If I wanted this to stick, I had to make it public. I needed an audience. That's when the idea hit me. Host a neighborhood appreciation barbecue. I hand-delivered invites, promising free ribs, baked beans, and plenty of sweet tea. Said it was a thank you for the community's patience during the whole raccoon mess. Never mentioned Karen, but I made sure it landed on the exact same night as the next HOA meeting. Curiosity would do the rest. The barbecue day came sunny and warm, and the scent of ribs drew folks out in droves. I had pies lined up on a folding table, a cooler stuffed with soda, and lawn chairs facing the side of my barn like an outdoor theater. Everyone thought it was just a hangout, until I rolled out a projector and lit up the barn wall. No speech. Just hit play. Up came the footage. Karen sneaking across my field with trash bags, slipping in a puddle, dumping garbage. Then came raccoons ripping through her yard like they had a vendetta. People gasped, some laughed, most leaned in. Then the real goods showed up, the folder I found, all the receipts, the flagged properties. Scanned and highlighted. The worst of it. Silence took over. Mike, the HOA VP, quiet guy, sandals with socks, stepped up, arms folded. "Is this legit?" he asked. I handed him the originals. His face went red flipping through them. Then he turned to the crowd and said words I won't forget. "I think it's time we vote." Karen didn't show up. Later she claimed she was too emotionally scarred by the wildlife, but I think she knew. Next week, an emergency HOA session was called. She was removed as president, done. Fined for dumping, misuse of funds, and behavior unbecoming of a board member. They didn't name the raccoons, but I bet they earned a silent nod. That night I sat on my porch with a cold beer, watching the sun dip down. The raccoons showed up like clockwork. I tossed them a few marshmallows and laughed as they chattered. The trash war was over. The HOA tyrant toppled. Peace had returned to my barn. But I knew Karen wouldn't slink off quietly. And sure enough, it didn't take long. Barely a week after her HOA downfall, I walked into the barn and nearly passed out. The stench hit like a freight train. Rotten fish with a hint of soured milk, baking in the summer heat. I stumbled outside, gagging. Circled the barn. That's where I found it. 2 trash bags leaking something unholy behind a haystack. I nudged one with a pitchfork. Out rolled a fish head. Rotten, raw, unwrapped. Right where my animals sleep. Not just gross, deliberate. No cameras this time. Karen had learned. But the message? Clear as day. She wasn't going down without throwing a few punches. I stood there with the pitchfork, caught between rage and, honestly, some grudging admiration. I hauled it out, double-bagged everything, and scrubbed the floor with enough bleach to knock out an elephant. My goats glared at me. The chickens looked personally offended. I kept checking the bushes, half expecting Karen to jump out with anchovy oil and a smirk. But here's the twist, her little prank? It backfired. While I was busy scrubbing fish guts, the raccoons found her gift. That night, they treated it like a 5-star buffet. I watched them from the barn window, wide-eyed, thrilled, tearing through the mess like furry gremlins. And that sparked an idea. I wasn't going to stoop to yelling or threats. No, I'd let nature handle it. I packed one of the smaller bags with fish scraps and sardine cans, dropped it near the gap in her fence, the raccoon shortcut. Didn't take long. Before midnight, they'd hauled it right into her flower bed and threw a wild party. Fish bits flew into her yard gnomes. One raccoon made off with a whole mackerel. It was beautiful. Next morning, chaos. Karen, in slippers and curlers, pacing, screaming into her phone about raccoon terrorism and demanding pest control. I just sat on my porch, sipping coffee. The HOA, now run by rational folks, sent her a polite email. I reminded her, politely, that managing wildlife was everyone's responsibility, and maybe she should stop leaving food or garbage out like a welcome mat. She must have lost it, because rumor has it she tried to call an emergency HOA meeting to restore order. Only 3 people showed up. 2 were just there for the cookies. Word of Karen's crash and burn spread like wildfire. Suddenly, folks who'd been too scared to speak up were swapping stories left and right. One guy said she fined him for having aggressively sloped grass. Another neighbor said Karen literally peeked over her fence to scold her about non-compliant patio chairs. Once Karen was gone, it felt like someone had lifted a curse. People painted their mailboxes wild colors. Lawn gnomes popped up like weeds. Someone even put up a 12-foot inflatable squirrel just to see if anyone would say something. Nobody did. Meanwhile, I somehow became local folklore. Folks started calling me the Raccoon Whisperer. A couple local bloggers hit me up for interviews. One pest control company even offered me a sponsorship if I'd post raccoon footage. I passed on that, but I did let a neighbor's teenage grandson launch a YouTube channel using trail cam videos. Turns out, the internet loves watching raccoons solve puzzles. One clip, where a raccoon unzips Karen's cooler and makes off with a pudding cup, hit 80,000 views. Even the HOA board finally chilled out. Mike, the new president, stopped by with a cooler full of beers and a fresh feed bucket, kind of a peace offering. Said he always had a hunch Karen was hiding something, but never had the guts to call her out. Things will be different now, he told me. More neighborly, less dictatorship. He even floated the idea of adding a critter clause to the handbook to make sure no one could ever weaponize raccoons again. We laughed. Mostly. Life settled back into its own weird rhythm, the kind where you share a yard with semi-domesticated trash bandits. I'd still feed them occasionally, just enough to keep them chill. They came and went, climbed trees, rolled in the grass, swiped a bit of chicken feed when they thought I wasn't looking. I didn't mind. They'd earned it. But of course, Karen couldn't help herself. A few weeks later, a little package showed up on my porch. No return address. Inside, a single garden gnome, painted green, middle finger up. Taped to it was a note. You think this is over? It's not. I couldn't stop laughing. Was it a threat? A joke? A gift? Who knows? I set the gnome right next to my welcome mat and added a little raccoon plush beside it, just to keep the vibe going. If Karen wanted to go full passive-aggressive, I could go pro. Then came the kicker. One night just before dusk, I spotted movement by the barn and went to check it out. There, waddling up the path, was a single raccoon carrying something in its mouth. It stopped a few feet away, dropped the item, and backed off. I stepped closer, squinted. Karen's slipper, the same one she lost during her infamous pre-dawn garbage meltdown. Muddy, torn, definitely hers. I picked it up and looked at the raccoon, who blinked at me like he was waiting for a verdict. I gave him a cracker. He took it and disappeared into the trees. I stood there for a bit, holding that ragged slipper, watching the sun set across the back pasture. Everything was still. The barn was clean. The critters were happy. And the raccoons? They were still watching. Still out there. Still ready. Just in case the HOA ever needed a reminder of what happens when you mess with the wrong neighbor.